It is your Classic Metal Show right here on the ClassicMetalShow.com. That is brand new Avantasia from their forthcoming release, Moonglow, and the name of the tune there is called Alchemy, which totally kicks ass. And speaking of kicking ass, a guy who has been totally kicking ass for almost 30 years now is our good friend, Tobias Sammet. Welcome back to the Classic Metal Show there, Toby.
Hello, good evening. Thanks for having me.
It's always good to have you back on the show, and I got to admire you, Toby. As long as I've been aware of you as well as your projects, be it Edguy or Avantasia or any of the things that you've been involved with, you are a full-time musician, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, there's different opinions on that, but, I've never had a proper job, if you mean that.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The music industry isn't quite what it used to be in the 60s and the 70s, and so a lot of people, as I'm sure you're well aware, have sidelines that they're involved with, but I can't even imagine how you could have a sideline with as busy as you are, writing, recording, touring, working 2 bands, all that kind of stuff. So I would consider you a full-time musician. That is your job, is it not?
It is, of course. I was just referring to the word musician. Some people that don't like our music, they would argue us being musicians, but yeah, I'm of course there's nothing else I can do. And there's also no time to do anything else. And I have to say I'm not really starving either. So yeah, I'm blessed. It's album number 18 coming out now, and world tour number 11 in the making. And yeah. It doesn't really get boring, I have to tell you. It's not that I sit at home a lot and wonder what I could do next.
Right, absolutely. Well, not that this matters, but I just wanted to ask you, Toby, are you a single guy?
No. I'm married.
Wow.
And I have a daughter, and yeah. House, cars, trash day. Really square and boring life, I tell you.
Well, it can't.
I mean, no, I don't want to, my wife here said it's not that boring, but I'm just, when I'm not on tour, I haven't been on tour now for 14 months or something like that. I haven't played a show in 14 months. Of course, I did some traveling for the record, going to England a couple of times and to some studios throughout Germany. But I haven't been on the road really touring for 14 months, and when I'm home, I'm doing rock and roll stuff like feeding the birds today as it's snowing outside. So these little fellows need some food and, trash day and, everything about everyday life.
Yeah. Well, the reason I ask is my partner Chris and I, we've been doing this Classic Metal Show for 23 years now, and we've had our ins and out with relationships and whatnot, and find that particularly when it comes to working our craft, as it were, the girls are just not so supportive, and so it's just like, well, it's either you, honey, or my show, and well, the show wins. You got to go.
No, yeah, I know exactly what you mean, but my wife is so super supportive. She's from the same business, and when we got together, we were already in our 30s, and that's always good. We've seen everything. We've been through everything ourselves, and now when we came together, it was good. We were not so young anymore, and that's it's great, and she's very, very supportive, and yeah, it's the way it's supposed to be.
Well, good for you, man. Well, let's talk about this new Avantasia. I mean, this is usually very bombastic, over-the-top presentation of music, a lot of deep layers there, and obviously you have a lot of people who work with you and participate in this project. You know, you often have the guest vocalist and people stepping in there and making this creation, quite a large undertaking when it comes to the presentation of music.
Yeah, it's very, very detailed and very. I mean, we've always had love for detail in Avantasia. That was part of the. I don't want to call it recipe because that sounds too artificially put together, but we've always had love for detail. But for this album, I think it was even more so because I had a lot of time to put it together because I had no deadline and no schedule, and I was just writing music and just recording it and putting the pieces of the puzzle together and exchanging some and crafting new pieces to put them in the puzzle, and without really feeling the pressure of having to deliver it anytime soon. And that's something I really, really needed after such a long time of quite a heavy pace. And yeah, I think that shines through when you listen to the final results.
Absolutely. Now, you're celebrating almost your 11th anniversary as far as the music is concerned, right? In the Avantasia project, right?
Well, it's my 20th anniversary with Avantasia this year.
Right, but as far as like releasing material.
Releasing material is probably no. The first album came out in 2000, so it's 19.
19, okay.
Yeah, it was the EP,
right?
The single of the first before the metal opera came out. Avantasia was the title track of the title track of the project that came out, I believe, in October or November 2000.
Wow, time goes very quickly, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and I realize that every time I look in the mirror.
Right. You know? Well, tell us a little bit about this new one, Moonglow. I mean, obviously, it's got some very long songs on it, very operatic in places, some very over the top, in your face metal influences there. Tell us a little bit about it. I know that you kind of wanted to mix it up a little bit on this and have all kinds of flavors here. So tell the fans about the process of, planning and recording this new record. Well,
as I said, I was without a record deal. It was the year 2016, and I wanted to slow down a little bit. Started to build my own studio because I needed a break. I needed a hobby myself, and I put the studio together. And of course, I constantly write music. I just didn't know, would it be a solo record or would it be whatever it would be. I didn't really care. And after a while, I realized it sounds like Avantasia. It feels like Avantasia. It's going to be Avantasia. And I just kept writing and arranging stuff. And I hooked up with Sasha Pat, the producer, literally on a daily basis, but sometimes on a weekly basis, and we arrange stuff together and put it together. And when I write music, it's never really about how long a song is, or I don't really try to format it a certain way. I do what comes out naturally because I believe that's the only way to be happy and be authentic. And to keep your intuition, which is very, very important. You have to keep your intuition. As soon as you start to do something that others demand or expect, you will lose or at least I think I would lose my sense for intuition. And I remember when it got further to releasing the album and when everything, it was a very, very long process. And I think it was late 2018 when I made the decision that we're going to come up with a first single, which is 11 minutes long. I remember the record label, going, "Oh my God, don't do it! Why 11 minutes? That doesn't really make sense. It's not." I said, "Why?" Because radio won't play it. And I said, "Yeah, but have you listened to the music on my records? When was the last time radio played something that I have created? It was commercial radio never plays it, because that type of music, in the public mainstream world, that type of music has been illegal for nearly 30 years.
Yeah.
So no matter if it's 3 minutes or 5 minutes, they don't give a fuck anyway.
Right.
So they were fine with it, and I just don't restrict myself. I don't restrain. I don't really want to cut anything short for no reason. If a song needs 11 minutes to unfold its beauty and to take a certain turn, I give it 11 minutes. It's no problem for me. It's just I want to see where the song takes me. And I rarely sit there with a stopwatch and say, okay, that song is too long. Or in heavy metal, it's very, very common. I've heard, I know a couple of producers, but so they tell me that bands really say, oh, we need a longer track. We should add something to that song because heavy metal fans like long songs. I think that's the opposite, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense either. You have to let the song take you its own direction and just make sure it gets what it needs and what it wants. And that's always been my approach. And I'm really happy with that new record because it's very, very colorful. It's bombastic. It's flamboyant. But at the same time, it's intimate in passages. You have passages that are as big as Richard Wagner and Meatloaf, and some people said Trans-Siberian Orchestra, which is a compliment because John Oliva is a great guy. He's a very, very nice guy and a very good songwriter. He's been on Avantasia like 6 years ago or something like that as well. And so sometimes it's really, really big and flamboyant. Sometimes it's very intimate and silent. Sometimes it's heavy. I don't see any limits and boundaries, and that's something great,
Yeah, well, that's funny you brought up the TSO comparison, because when I was listening to the record, I was thinking that I was hearing elements of TSO there. And, I didn't know if bringing up that comparison would be a compliment or it would be a, well, I'm not ripping somebody off, but it has that. Yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, I've never been influenced by TSO. I just know that there is a certain similarity.
Yes.
And of course, Sabotage have been influential to me, and they have been influential because they are the core. They are the basic foundation of TSO in a way. If I would have to compare the two things, and I know some people do it because some people said we're the European equivalent of TSO, and I don't really necessarily think so. I mean, it's really funny because TSO is a lot more American. TSO are super big in the U.S. and not so big here in Europe, or quite smaller here in Europe. We are quite big in Europe and pretty small in the U.S. I mean, we're doing our first tour. I mean, we've played in the U.S. a couple of shows before, but our first tour in a few months we're going to do in the U.S. But anyway, I always say that we are the more grotesque version of it. It's more eerie. It's not TSO is big and epic and flamboyant and polished, and we are not so polished. We are grotesque and scary, and we're the underdog. We're the nasty little thing next to TSO.
Right. So you're the dark TSO.
Well, TSO is Walt Disney, and we're Tim Burton.
I gotcha. Well, it's a great new disc, and look, obviously it took a lot of time and what do you want to call arranging and whatnot, because there is a lot of elements to the music here, instrument wise and vocal wise and movement wise. I mean, there's a lot to this disc, so it definitely will take you on a trip, which I want to bring up the fact that I noticed with this release, you're offering a lot of physical product, and as I'm sure you're well aware, in the last decade or so, physical product has been going away for a while. But you're offering this obviously in download, CD form, album form, offering picture books, all kinds of stuff. How is the merchandising end of this work for you? Is it a hot seller? Does it sell out? Is it something that the fans are clamoring for? Because to be honest with you, the unfortunate part is the people that I know, they don't seem to really care as much about physical product unless you're really a hardcore enthusiast.
Yeah, well, I know that's a very, very weird movement and development, I think, but it's the way it is. I think a lot of what I do is based on doing it for myself, I approach things asking, what would I want to have? What would I want to own? What would I want to buy? And I'm very, very old school. And I like to have a great product. And I know that in the music industry, it's become very common that they adjust to the declining market by offering product that is less expensive to manufacture. So they can offer it cheaper, so some people buy it, but it's a vicious circle, because I think you have to deliver something really, really precious for those people who really still want to possess something and who still approach it like a piece of art, and therefore it has to have a certain value. And I want to possess great things, and I think there are people out there who want to possess great things that they can hold in their hands, that they can disappear in. And Avantasia has always also been about escapism. And I think, therefore, it's great to hold a big book in your hands and to disappear in it. It's romantic. You feel it, you smell it, you can read it, you can go through it, and you can look at the pictures, and you can disappear in it, and it can consume you. And that's something I can relate to. When I was a kid, I remember taking home Iron Maiden, Seventh Son of the Seventh Son on a bus, and I had the vinyl. I smelled it. I must have come across like a pervert, smelling a vinyl, and and looking at the pictures and the inner sleeve and Nico McBrain's pullover, his their clothes were really funny, and I was looking at everything, and I was really losing myself in the product, and that's something, that's a feeling. And it's not about money, you can make money with downloads too, but that's great to pass on that experience and to give younger kids a chance of having that experience. And that's why all these configurations are there. I mean, I was so weird. We have a limited edition that is a huge coffee table book, 68 pages, I believe, with a lot of photos from the production process and art prints of an English Victorian painter, John Atkinson Grimshaw, just because I find his paintings so imaginative and so inspiring. I have him in my study over my piano and over my desk, and I thought these kinds of paintings, they have to be in the booklet because they are great imaginative paintings. And I bought the rights to those images to include them in the package of the album and all these things. Yes, it's crazy and it's outdated and it doesn't really make sense and it's not feasible, but it's rock and roll doesn't have to be feasible.
Absolutely. Well, I got to ask you before I let you go here, Toby, one of the tracks that you included on this new disc is a song that was popular here in the States way back in 1983 as part of the soundtrack for a movie called Flashdance. You included Michael Sembello's song Maniac. What inspired you to include that as part of the CD?
Pure hedonism, you know. It was pure fun. It was not planned to be part of the CD. I just liked that track, and I suggested it to a producer. We did a cover version of it. I thought, it's so great, that cover version, it doesn't make sense to include it in a rock opera, but rock and roll is not about making sense, you know. You have to really hit the right button when you're working in a nuclear plant. When you're working in a rock band, it's not about hitting the right button. It's hitting about buttons and enjoying it and seeing what happens. And so I thought, let's make this track a full-blown Avantasia track, because it's a 4 minutes track. The whole album is full of long songs of 11 minutes, 10 minutes, 7 minutes, 7.5 minute songs. Let's take this track and let's find a duet partner who will make it even more an Avantasia song. And of course, I immediately thought of Eric Martin and Mr. Big. He had worked with Avantasia before. He's a longtime Avantasia family member. And he did it. And, you know, the result was so great, it was out of the question to put it on the record. We did it. And I think it's a great counterbalance. A good old 4.5 minutes rock song that people can sing along to even before they heard it for the first time.
Sure.
That's a great counterbalance to all the long and embellished material that people find on the album. So, that was the whole story behind it.
Absolutely. All right, Toby. Well, I know we're a little short on time here, so I just want to let the fans know that there is a brand new Avantasia release coming out via Nuclear Blast Records, and there's all kinds of good, merchandise you can buy, and it is set to hit the stores February 15th, and Avantasia will be out on tour. They start their tour in March, and it runs through the end of May. And if you're here in the States, you can catch them here in San Jose, Anaheim, California, here in Chicago, also in Canada, in Montreal, and Worcester, Massachusetts. And maybe I'll come out and check out the show when it hits Chicago there, Toby.
Absolutely, you should do it. We're going to bring a great lineup. You know, it's going to be a 3-hour show. Going to play old songs, new songs. There will be Jorn Lande, there will be Ronnie Atkins of the Pretty Maids, Bob Catley of Magnum, Eric Martin and Mr. Big. There will be Jeff Tate, amazing vocalist, and and it will be a massive show. It will be the the grotesque sibling of the beautiful TSO.
Perfect. All right, Toby. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you here on the Classic Metal Show. You're always welcome back anytime. And I'm glad to see that you're still out there really giving it all you've got. So as a tradition here, we always let the artist pick a song from the new release and tell us a quick story about it.
A great song. Let me take a great song. I'm just going through these songs here, and I think they're all great. I think we should go with Ghost in the Moon.
Okay.
It's a song that I'm singing myself, but what I like so much about the song is that it wasn't planned to be sung by myself only, but I did the whole song, also as a guide track for a potential duet partner, and the producer, Sasha Pett. Usually, you know, I don't really care what he says, of course. But in that case, he said, Toby, we won't record any other singer because I really love your vocal performance here and nothing should be replaced. And of course, me usually being quite stubborn, I immediately agreed to his opinion because, after all, he is the producer. and said, okay, thank you very much. Then we keep my voice throughout the whole song. And it's a great song. The whole song is, 10 minutes long. It's got different sections. We did backing vocals for that song with a gospel choir, and we recorded hours and hours backing vocals just for that one song. And if you play it, everybody will know why.
Oh, perfect. All right. Well, go pick up your brand new Avantasia featuring our good friend Toby here. The brand new CD out on Nuclear Blast Records is called Moonglow. And, well, here it is. This is Ghost in the Moon, exclusively here on Your Classic Metal Show.